Hi everybody, it's Lindsay with High Altitude Astrology, and today I'm bringing you a video about the new moon in Taurus that is happening on Wednesday, the 22nd of April, 2020 at 9:26 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. The new moon chart is here on the screen, and you can see that the new moon happens when the sun and the moon are together in the zodiac. And here they're at 3 degrees of Taurus. So new moons are the beginning of a cycle. They happen every month. In 2 weeks, we will have the full moon in the opposite sign of Scorpio. So depending on the sign of the new moon, that gives us a flavor of what the next couple of weeks are going to be about as far as beginnings and newness. Because the sun is our light, how we shine our light out into the world, our individuality, our will, our divine spark. And the moon is our intuition, our emotions, our feelings. So the two are together at the new moon time, and it's setting the stage for the month to come as far as how those two energies will be operating in tandem, essentially, as we work towards our goals or as we experience the month ahead. So Taurus is all about things that are practical, useful, things that often have to do with the material world and providing security on a material level for us. So this involves money, also the experience of pleasure. I'm going to read from Paul Grell's keywords, and he says that Taurus is about determination, consistency, practicality, materialism, physicality, emotional, as in affectionate, artistic, domestic, thorough, endurance, conservative, passive, placidity, harmonious, and accumulativeness. So you kind of get the feeling about Taurus. It's like, how can we create a world around us that brings us security, that brings us peace, that brings us that feeling of being able to kind of relax and enjoy, because Venus rules Taurus, so that has a lot of the influence to the Taurian expression. So basically what this new moon is indicating is that our focus is going to be on how are we going to move forward creating the material world, creating security for ourselves in the material world, but also not only that, but in our love lives, in the way that we receive affection or give affection. These are also Taurian qualities. So relationships and finances are definitely going to be a big part of this next month that the new moon in Taurus is going to be highlighting. Now, what's interesting about the new moon are a few things. First of all, you can see that the new moon squares Saturn. Saturn is here in Aquarius and at 1 degree, and the new moon again is at 3 Taurus. So that's about 90 degrees between those energies. So Saturn has to do with about the effort that we have to put in to create things. Saturn deals with discipline and the structures that we create in our lives. It's work, it's effort, it's duty, it's responsibility, it's lessons, it's teachings. These are all Saturnian qualities. And in the sign of Aquarius, this has to do with bringing a new perspective to the way that we go about doing things, perhaps to our work, Saturn in Aquarius. Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, which is the only planet that spins sideways on its axis. And Aquarius deals with something different. It deals with revolution. It deals with being an individual. It does deal with what they call the higher mind or higher logic, where there's like insight coming to us about certain things. That's why it's equated with invention, and it's equated with science. So Saturn in Aquarius does want facts. It's very rational, and it also understands that it takes work and it takes effort in order to progress our lives. So when you've got Saturn squaring the sun and moon, new moon in Taurus, this is suggesting that there's something at this new moon time that is kind of asking the Taurian energy, which can sometimes be fixed because it is a fixed sign, but comfortable, doesn't really want to move. It's the bull sitting in the field eating its grass. It's very sedentary at times and just kind of enjoying the pleasures of life. But Saturn says we've got to work towards Aquarius, the new. We've got to take steps, make effort towards what is going to be guiding us, in the direction that we ultimately want to go. And the other thing that Saturn has to do with, it is called a social planet because it deals with like law. And Jupiter and Saturn are both social planets in the fact that they govern more of the issues that govern society collectively. So when you're dealing with Saturn in Aquarius, this might be reflective of like new ideas around laws or structures in society that have to be integrated into how we express the Taurian nature. So for example, that might be like realizing that we've got to incorporate a perspective that thinks of humanity or thinks of the whole or thinks of the group. Whereas the sun in Taurus might just be more about like wanting to get its own needs met. So that might be part of what we're seeing as we move forward into this next month, is how do we integrate the need to have laws or have rules about the group or the collective, and how they may or may not fit into our established kind of way of being already. So that's another perspective on the Saturn square to the new moon, Saturn in Aquarius. Now, what's also kind of bringing up this idea of some kind of change is that Uranus in Taurus is sitting right near the new moon within 3 degrees. You can see Uranus is here at 6 degrees of Taurus. And they say Uranus is in its fall in Taurus because if Uranus is all about change and evolution and revolution and individuality, Taurus again is like, I want to keep it the same. It's comfortable. I don't really want to change. And so they're not necessarily compatible. But Uranus is very powerful. This Uranus in Taurus is what's making us collectively, because Uranus does deal also with the larger group and collective consciousness. And Uranus in Taurus, because Taurus rules nature and the earth, Uranus in Taurus is what's helping us realize that the impact that our actions or even like our materialism, because that's very Taurian, is having on the globe, on the earth, on humanity. And of course, Uranus stays in one sign for several years, like 7 years. So it's only about 1.5 years or so into its tour through Taurus. But that's a little bit about what Uranus and Taurus is helping us to kind of collectively awaken to. But with it being near the sun and moon, again, near the moon, our emotional expression, and the sun, our light and our individuality and how we shine out into the world, what it's saying is that there's something being stirred at this new moon time where it is really asking the Taurian principle to kind of shift, to awaken, to evolve. Uranus has a lot to do with evolution for the good of everybody, for the good of humanity. So this could just be integrating, some of these new ways that we're being asked, as far as, like, for example, how we're relating to money. If Taurus is about the material world, Uranus is sort of shaking Taurus up there and saying, how much is enough? What do you really need? And so with Uranus being there with the sun and the moon in the sign of Taurus, it's now speaking to us on a very personal level as far as that piece or that aspect of our lives goes. And there's been a lot happening for people because we are in the midst of this COVID-19 pandemic, and it is bringing up for many of us what our relationship is to the material world, because a lot of people may not be able to sustain the way they were relating to the material world up until this point. And so, we're kind of getting a wake-up call at this new moon time to say, how can we integrate this Uranian in Taurus, like evolving and progressing in our own lives in relationship to money or possessions or the material world, and even to relationships. And I said before that Venus rules Taurus. So there is an aspect to Venus that does deal with relationships. And because Uranus has been in Taurus now for a little while, and because this new moon is happening with Uranus there, what this could also be bringing up for people is saying, it's time, or it is time to look at and perhaps start taking action towards changing the relationships in our lives that are no longer working. And again, I will go back to this Saturn and Aquarius squaring this new moon energy. It's like Saturn saying, okay, what needs to be done in order to progress us? Again, Aquarius. So there, in general, Taurus is like a really nice energy in the sense that it feels good. It's ruled by Venus. It wants to experience the pleasures of life. But Uranus is right there next to the sun and moon. And then Saturn is squaring the sun and moon. So this is kind of a different vibe for the Taurus energy. And it's really kind of asking for, I would say, some authenticity. That is what Uranus is all about. Uranus really doesn't care about following the herd, and it doesn't really subscribe to what everybody else does. It's about being an individual and breaking free from the confines of what it feels is keeping it contained. Now, again, with Saturn in this picture, there is something in Saturn in Aquarius, the sign that Uranus rules, there is something to be said about how much individuality and, it's sort of saying, like, let's not rebel just for rebellion's sake. It's asking Saturn in Aquarius to be practical about the way that we, want to incorporate these changes. Saturn may be saying, let's come up with a plan, and how are we going to execute this? And what's the timeline? Those are very Saturnian questions about when things and how things are going to get done. So Saturn being in the sign of Aquarius is just saying that we need to be patient, we need to take things slowly, and we need to be responsible about how we execute or go about incorporating these progressive and evolutionary energies into our lives moving forward. A couple of other things that are going on also is that this new moon energy at 3 degrees of Taurus is sextiling the North Node in Cancer, and the North Node is almost into Gemini, not quite yet, but the sextile between the new moon and the North Node in Cancer, the North Node in Cancer has really given us an opportunity to realize that what's necessary for us is to feel secure and to feel comfortable emotionally and fulfilled emotionally, and to feel nurtured in our life. I mean, I find it kind of ironic, these last few degrees of the North Node going through Cancer, where many of us are being forced to be in our homes and kind of reconnect with this whole principle of feeling nurtured and feeling like we're being taken care of in our homes, hopefully. And so this North Node sextiling the new moon is just saying that this new moon in Taurus energy is working with that North Node in Cancer energy of wanting to move us forward on this path of feeling safe, feeling secure, feeling nurtured in our lives. So next I want to talk about the fact that Venus and Mars are close to trining here. It's not quite, but they're within a degree of one another. And again, Venus rules Taurus, which is the sign the new moon is in. So the fact that Venus is in Gemini at this new moon time, this is suggesting that Venus, the sign that rules Taurus, is helping us to communicate more about what it is we're needing in order to experience pleasure, in order to experience harmony, in order to experience peace in our lives, and being able to communicate about it, talk about it. That's part of Venus in Gemini. I mean, you can just say Venus in Gemini in general is sort of a lot more communication with our loved ones and with people in our immediate sphere, that kind of thing, or finding enjoyment and finding pleasure and being creative through writing. But because the new moon is in Taurus, we look at Venus, and this gives us a little bit more of a understanding of a pathway to kind of channeling or expressing this new moon energy. And in this sense, it's about beginning to think and communicate about what it is we really want, what really brings us pleasure, what really helps us feel good. And because Gemini is a mutable energy, this could just lend towards some of the being open to some of the changes that might be coming through this next month with the new moon in Taurus, and being able to kind of be mutable about these changes and embrace them as we're moving forward. Now, Mars, assertive energy, strength, courage in Aquarius, does suggest that there's something about the actions that we take also wanting to progress our lives, to move our lives forward, and that we actually will be connecting with the desire to really express our individuality through the energy of taking action. And so when you've got Venus and Mars, again, going back to what I said earlier, in a trine, there's something about the two energies. These both rule like this, the sexual aspects of relating. So Venus is about the pleasure principle, whereas Mars is about the assertive principle, the desire principle, but they're harmonizing. So there's something also speaking to us at this new moon time that's saying, there's energy here to help us move, Mars in Aquarius, towards the future that is connected with our ability to be able to speak and share our minds regarding what we value and what we find beautiful, and also just how we may want to be making money. If we go back to the Taurus principle being about finances and how we create financial security in our lives, and there may be many of us who are reevaluating this aspect of our lives right now. This Venus trine Mars is a symbol for being able to implement some of these these new ideas around the material world or around creating financial security in our lives. And then we have Mercury in Aries sextiling both Mars and Venus at this new moon time. So Mercury, communication, thinking, networking, in Aries, the sign of the warrior, the sign of the go-getter, you know, the sign of doing. This also is another support at this new moon time that just suggests that the things, you know, that we may want to talk about, we will feel confident with that Mercury in Aries, and be able to do it in a harmonious way, Venus in Gemini, but also do it in a way that is, you know, self-assertive, Mars, and that helps us move towards a new future for ourselves, and that would be Aquarius. So the last principle of Taurus I want to talk about that this new moon may be helping us connect with is the fact that Taurus really, at its sort of highest expression, is about the spiritual enlightenment, or just has a very spiritual aspect to it. And that's because of its ability to be very present in life. And this is from an article, astrologyforthesoul.com. And this writer, his name is Moses Sirigard III. And what I wanted to share that he says about Taurus is, he says, Taurus is precisely the first and most significant sign that represents the unity of spirit and matter, inner peace and outer fullness, resting in the present moment and being active in the physical world, loving others yet taking care of ourselves first, valuing the ideal of peace but remaining grounded in practical reality. With our modern psyche so fundamentally divided, of course, we have been blind to see Taurus as it really is, a union of heaven and earth. But in this age of Aquarius, we have the opportunity to take advantage of a higher logic, one which accepts rather than rejects apparent contradiction, and unites the opposites that our rational logic has told us were irreconcilable. This is the age of both, no longer the age of either or. If we do not recognize that Taurus is the greatest astrological symbol of the union of the sacred and the secular, then our astrology also is preserving a dangerous split between the two. And he goes on to say here, Taurus is about a holistic efficiency that applies to all levels of a human being, including the material, bodily, mental, emotional, and spiritual levels. Material self-sufficiency is being able to support oneself financially. Bodily self-sufficiency is knowing how to care for and heal one's body as much as possible by oneself and through a healthy lifestyle. Emotional self-sufficiency is self-love instead of leaning too much on others. Mental self-sufficiency is not being overly dependent on others for knowledge, and spiritual self-sufficiency is deriving our peace and our happiness from within and not from without. And I think that's really an important message because, again, Uranus is right there in this new moon configuration. And that is really about being an individual. And I think there's so much change happening right now and so much information out there for everybody to subscribe to. And I feel that this new moon is kind of bringing it back down in a grounded way to say, you know what? You have a connection to your own truth. And with taking care of our bodies through our mental health, perhaps meditation, through our physical health, through the things that we consume, through the various aspects that he was talking about. Of course, our financial health and self-love and spiritual self-sufficiency, you know, that there's something about focusing on those aspects of ourselves that brings a peace for us. And so in the midst of all of the different perspectives, you know, we then know ourselves. And so with that, I want to read the inside degree for 3 degrees of Taurus and see if we can extrapolate some of what I was talking about just now from this description by Elias Lonsdale. And he says, 3 degrees of Taurus, a sleepwalker. Everything begins with an inward cast. And then if you wish to get anywhere, you must go there on the inside and meet yourself there when you arrive. You feel a desire to memorize the territory of all the inner ways, to remember them, to recognize them, and to be able to follow them when it counts. You feel like you've been taught in the dream state, shown everything in dreamless sleep and through dreams. You're subtly and pervasively closely accompanied by a protective guiding spirit, held within the soul's alembic, entrusted to the angels, living in threshold sensitivity, attuned to the edge, led by the spirit through darkness into light, subliminal, enchanted, anxious, and at peace, always searching for something more, remembering in your soul the lost earth ways and giving over to spirits. You belong to the infinite and wander through the finite worlds. You are like a stranger, knowing something else is at stake here. Something else is going on here. Something else is completely involved. So a lot in that. But for me, I feel, again, going back to the Sun, Moon, Uranus in Taurus conjunction at this new moon time, and even with the square from Aquarius, because Aquarius is about, like I said earlier, higher logic. So it's this intuitive knowing that can happen for us. So there's almost like there's something about with that Saturn squaring this that is saying we need to trust ourselves more. You know, we need to tune into our own selves more and allow that to be a guiding force for us at this time, especially with Uranus next to the new moon in Taurus. Again, Uranus being this awakener, Uranus being this very highly attuned consciousness, to help us navigate, you know, where we're headed on a financial level, on a material level, on a relationship level, and just really the things, you know, the peace in our own life, you know, the things that make us feel good, the Venusian energy that rules Taurus. There's something at this new moon time that is saying, turn inward. There's so much going on out there, and everybody has a perspective, and everybody wants you to think a certain way. And it's like, where is your center? Where is your peace? Where is your path forward with a sense of your own internal navigation? All right, that's everything I have for you for this new moon in Taurus. I hope it's excellent for you. And please leave any comments if you have about this video or other ideas you have to share about the new moon time. If you like my video, please subscribe. I'd appreciate it. And I'll see you at the next video. Take care.